Last time we talked about black body radiation. I'll have a review. This is the cavity wall, and when we hit the cavity wall, cavity wall irradiate radiation, and cavity wall reabsorb radiation. And after some time, equilibrium is established, and we can define light intensity distribution inside the cavity, which is in equilibrium at temperature T. According to Kirchhoff, the intensity distribution is independent of the cavity walls, and scientists try to develop the method to rederive this intensity distribution. And two scientists are introduced in our textbook. First one is Frank Rayleigh, and second one is Planck. And their formula share a common structure. They are composed two parts. First part remains identical. Second part is which corresponds to the oscillator energy which generate radiation. And there are two ways to calculate oscillator energy. In Rayleigh, he assumed that the oscillator energy is continuous. So this is equal to the integration of this formula. While Planck assumed that the oscillator energy is quantized. So they use summation instead of integration. So result is different. When you evaluate this integration, it is equal to kBt. When you evaluate this summation, it is equal to h nu over exponential h nu over kBt. So and the according to experimental findings, this results agrees very well experimental data. And we also show that when the frequency approaches zero, the Planck formula approaches Rayleigh formula. This is the story we covered in last time. This is black body radiation. And as I said in the introduction of quantum mechanics, there are three experimental findings that could not be explained by quantum mechanics. First one is black body radiation, we just discovered, and second one is photoelectric effect. Third one is hydrogen atom spectrum. Today we are going to study photoelectric effect and hydrogen atom. So now we are going to study photoelectric effect. Photoelectric effect refers to the phenomenon here. Here is metal. Radiation is shown on the metal with the frequency nu. Then electron is ejected from the metal. And electron come out with specific kinetic energy. This phenomenon is called photoelectric effect. So when light is shown on the metal, electron is ejected. This phenomenon actually could be explained by classical mechanics. How can you explain this phenomenon in terms of classical mechanics? The electron is bound to nucleus. It feels electrostatic attraction. The binding energy is called phi. So when you supply electrons energy with more than binding energy, then electron can be ejected. So the electron can be ejected. This explanation is possible with classical mechanics. But there is something that could not be explained by classical mechanics. There are three experimental findings could not be explained by classical mechanics. First one is that when you supply energy, the energy is supplied by light. In classical mechanics, light is wave, so you can imagine waveform. And according to classical mechanics, energy of light is proportional to the square of amplitude. Light energy is proportional to the square of amplitude. So, if when the electron is not ejected, it means that electron does not have enough energy to overcome the binding energy. So, you can increase the amplitude. So, if you can use bright light or intense light, then you can eject electrons, because when you increase the amplitude, you can supply more energy to electrons, so electron can be ejected. This is the classical picture of the photoelectric effect. But according to experimental findings, there is a threshold frequency exists. So when you use smaller than threshold frequency light, then electron is not emitted. How intense or how bright light is used, no electron is emitted if you use smaller than threshold frequency. The threshold frequency exists. This fact cannot be explained by classical mechanics. And secondly, the kinetic energy. According to classical mechanics, kinetic energy must be proportional to the intensity. As I said before, according to classical mechanics, light energy depends on the amplitude scale, which is proportional to intensity. When you increase the intensity, then the light energy increases. So the electron kinetic energy increases. This is the prediction by classical mechanics, but according to experimental findings, kinetic energy does not depend on intensity, but it depends on frequency of light. This fact also cannot be explained by classical mechanics. Thirdly, there is no time delay between light hitting the metal and the electron is ejected. The time delay between hitting the metal and the electron ejected is no time delay. And I can explain why time delay is needed in classical mechanics. In classical mechanics, light is wave. So light is spread over time. So I assume that this is the 10 seconds. The light carries energy over 10 seconds. So let us assume that the light 10 seconds, during this time period, the light carries 100 units of energy is carried. And the electron binding energy is 200. Then how much time wait the electrons to overcome binding energy? 20 seconds is needed to overcome binding energy, because on 10 seconds carries only 100 unit of energy is carried, but binding energy is 200. So electron wait for 20 seconds. This is time delay. So because light is wave, time delay is inevitable if we assume that light is wave. But according to experimental findings, no time delay is observed. Only if threshold frequencies, if we use the frequency is higher than threshold frequency, the electron is emitted instantaneously. No time delay is observed. So these three experimental findings cannot be explained by classical mechanics. Now Einstein step in. And he solved these three mysteries to using one assumption. He assumed that light with frequency nu has behaves like a particle which have energy equal h. With these assumptions, they can explain all of three mysteries. According to his theory, light with frequency nu behaves like a particle, and the energy of this particle is h nu. So, according to his argument, when the photon hit the metal, the energy is h nu. The energy of h nu is transferred to the electrons. The electron acquires energy of h nu, and this energy is used in two ways. First one is the binding energy. A portion of binding energy is used, and remaining energy is used by kinetic energy. So according to energy conservation, photon energy is converted to binding energy, and the remaining part is converted to kinetic energy. So I'm going to rearrange this equation to solve for kinetic energy. And I'm going to plot this equation. I'm going to plot kinetic energy on the y-axis, and I'm going to plot frequency on the x-axis. So if I plot nu on the x-axis kinetic energy and y-axis, it looks like this. When you draw this equation, you get straight line. What is the slope of this line? It is Planck constant. So this is the prediction by Einstein. What this point corresponds? This point corresponds threshold frequency. At this frequency, the kinetic energy of electron equals to 0. When the frequency is smaller than threshold frequency, the kinetic energy becomes negative. So electron cannot be ejected. So at least the frequency of light must be higher than threshold frequency. So you can explain the existence of threshold frequency here, and you can also explain why kinetic energy is proportional to u. You can see here, kinetic energy is proportional to u, and you can even calculate the slope of this line. And Einstein is a theoretist, not an experimentalist. Actually, experimentalist conduct experiment. Who? Millikan. He is famous for oil drop experiment. He actually performed this experiment. He obtained the experiment like this. And actually he measured the slope of this line, and he measured the Planck constant exactly. And finally, why no time delay? Because light is particle. So light is a photon, which is particle. So particles, a single photon strikes a single electron. So photon's energy transferred to electron instantaneously. So no time delay is needed. So all of three mysteries can be solved by assuming that light behaves like a particle. Anyway, Einstein can explain this photoelectric effect. But this proposal was proposed in 1905, but this proposal was not accepted. Just like Avogadro. Do you remember? When Avogadro proposed molecular theory, every scientist does not accept it. it takes about 50 years to accept Avogadro's molecular hypothesis. Similarly, when Einstein proposed this theory, it takes about 10 years to accept, persuade scientists to accept this hypothesis. There's a profound historical drama. I will explain it shortly. There's a research on light in late 1600. Famous scientist Newton and Hyons. Hyons proposed that light is wave, while Newton proposed that light is particle. And at the time, all the optical phenomena can be explained by both wave theory and particle theory. Wave theory and particle theory can explain all the optical phenomena. Both of them can explain. But as you know, Newton is more famous than Hyons. He is more famous and more prestigious. He is actually non-touchable. So 1700, entire 1700, scientists, all the scientists accept Newton's particle theory. Actually, through entire 1700, every scientist believed that light is particle. And 1800, some experimental findings appears which cannot be explained by particle theory. The first one is Thomas Young's double slit experiment. As you know, double slit experiment shows that light shows interference. Interference pattern cannot be explained by particle theory. At the same time, Fresnel shows that light also diffraction pattern. Diffraction pattern also cannot be explained by particle theory. And 1850, Foucault and Fizeau measured the speed of light. In water. This is important. In 1850, they measured the speed of light in water. This is important. Why? As I said before, late 1600, Newton and Hyons explained the optical phenomena, both of them. The phenomenon includes refraction. Refraction can be explained by both wave theory or particle theory. This phenomenon can be explained by both wave theory and particle theory, but there are one big difference. To explain refraction in terms of wave theory, we must assume that the speed of light in water must be slower than air, as we know now today. But to explain refraction using particle theory, the speed of light in water must be faster than air. There's a difference, right? But in late 1600, they cannot measure the speed of light. But finally, 1850, they can measure the speed of light in water, and it turned out to be that the speed of light in water is slower than the speed of air. So it means that Newton's particle theory is wrong, right? And 1868, Maxwell appears. You know the Maxwell-Boltzmann distributions, Maxwell. he combined electricity and magneticity to develop Maxwell equations. And using Maxwell equation, they proved that there's a form of wave in the form of electromagneticity. In the form of electromagnetic, there exists a wave in the form of electromagnetic, and he can calculate the speed of wave just mathematically. And when they calculate the speed of this wave, it is approximately equal to the measured speed of light by Fuso and Fico. It means that light is a wave of electromagnetic wave. And finally, 1888, Hertz finally he experimentally generate electromagnetic wave. So at this time, Hertz put an end to the particle theory of wave theory. This is the final year that particle theory of wave is ended. And 1905, Einstein came up with particle theory once again. So actually, long time, scientists believed that light is particle, right? And 115 years after, they finally accept that light is wave. And 1905, Einstein once again revived particle theory of light. So it was very, very difficult for them to accept particle theory of light once again. So everybody didn't accept particle theory of light. And this is historical story. Anyway, so according to Einstein, E equal h nu. According to his argument, for the frequency of nu, the photon energy is equal to h nu. But the question is, what is related to the concept of that light is a particle? The question is that the light of frequency nu has energy h nu. What is related to the concept that light is a particle? This is the question. Now, according to classical physics, for the frequency of nu, we can imagine the waveform. As I said before, according to classical physics, the energy of light is proportional to the square of the amplitude, and the amplitude is continuous. It can take any arbitrary small value. So according to classical physics, the light energy is continuous and can take any arbitrary small value. This is classical view. But according to Einstein, the light of frequency nu has a minimum amount of energy. Minimum amount of energy is this h. This is the minimum amount of energy that light can have. Light can have energy less than this one. This is the minimum amount of energy. This is similar to atomic weight. Matter can have less than atomic weight, similar to this one. Light can have energy which it cannot have that is less than h nu. Light can have energy that is integer multiple of h nu. Matter can have energy integer multiple of atomic weight. This is similar. Okay, this is Einstein's photoelectric experiment. And now move on to hydrogen atom spectrum. From the beginning of the Rutherford's model, the Rutherford model faced a very serious problem when they nucleus is at the center, electron revolves around the nucleus, and the electron is charged particle, so it continues to emit radiation, and it loses energy. So it is supposed to collect to nucleus. So it faces a serious problem. And electron emit radiation. So when you measure the spectrum emitted by electron, it must be continuous spectrum because electron energy is continuous. It continues to lose energy. So the spectrum emitted by electron must be continuous. This is the prediction by classical mechanics, but according to experimental findings, the spectrum from hydrogen is line spectrum. So this spectrum cannot be explained by classical mechanics. Now Bohr stepped in to explain this line spectrum. This is the story we are going to cover today. But as you know, Bohr developed quantum mechanics to explain this one. But long before Bohr began his research, spectroscopy conducted this kind of spectroscopic research long before Bohr began his research. So first, I'm going to review spectroscopy research. So in the handout, in the upper part, you can see the line spectrum obtained in the visible region. When you measure the hydrogen spectrum in the visible region, you can see this is first line appears to second line in blah 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 blah. So the first scientist is Balmer. Balmer is not actually a physicist, not a chemist, but a math teacher. He developed a formula which can explain these numbers. His formula is here. When you plug in n equals 3, the first Balmer line appears. When you plug in n equals 4, second Balmer line is here. So this formula accurately predicts the peak position of the Balmer series. So this is the formula proposed by Balmer. But this is the visible region. And then Rydberg appears. And Rydberg slightly modified this formula. Actually, he takes the reciprocal of this wavelength. And you take reciprocal of this one. And you take reciprocal. Here. And 4 go out of parentheses. 4 to the denominator. 4 is equal to 2 square, 2 to the 2. So this equation is equivalent to this one. And Rydberg make a profound claim that this formula is not restricted to any 2. This formula can take arbitrary value of m. This is a profound claim. When m equal to, this is equal to Balmer series. When m equal to Balmer series. But this formula does not restrict to only m equal to. When m equal 1, this formula predicts the Riemann series. When m equal 3, Paschen series. So this formula are applicable for arbitrary integer value. this is the finding claimed by Rydberg. And he replaced this constant R. This formula proposed by Rydberg. This formula, very important implication. According to this formula, the spectrum are composed of difference by two terms. Difference between two terms. This is very important. Why? You may already learn both atomic model in last year. According to Bohr's hypothesis, electron occupies only stationary discrete energy level orbit, and according to Bohr, when does electron emit radiation? Electron emitted from quantum jump, right? From one state to the other state, then make a quantum jump, they can irradiate radiation. There's a start, there's an end, right? So one state is start, the other is end. This formula implies that this process long before Bohr developed this hypothesis. So this formula was very important formulation. And from this one, scientists realized that this quantity is very important. Reciprocal of wavelength. Reciprocal of wavelength is far more important than the wavelength itself. So we are going to define this quantity nu hat. This is called wave number. Reciprocal of wavelength is defined as wave number. Wave number is far more important than wavelength itself from this formula. And what is the unit of wave number? Wave number is defined 1 over lambda. What's the unit of wave number? Wavelength is meter. So unit of wave number is m to the minus 1. But spectroscopy use centimeter minus 1 instead of meter inverse 1. So this unit are more favorable for spectroscopists. So anyway, this unit is a conveniently used unit for spectroscopists. So anyway, this is empirical formula. When you apply this empirical formula, you can predict the experimental observation, but you cannot explain how this formula is derived. This is not theoretical formula. This is experimental formula. You cannot explain how this formula is derived. Who derived this formula? Who derived this formula? So I'm going to derive this formula following both hypotheses. So next step is how Bohr derived this formula. Both argue that the microscopic world cannot be explained by classical mechanics. In microscopic world, we need new kind of mechanics is needed. So he proposed new assumptions. First assumption is this: nucleus is here, electron is here. And according to classical mechanics, the radius r take any arbitrary value according to classical mechanics, but according to Bohr, electrons cannot take any arbitrary value. You can take some quantized value. This value is called stationary state. You can take only discrete quantized stationary state is occupied. And when the electrons occupies stationary state, it does not emit light. But this proposition is contradictory to classical mechanics. According to classical mechanics, when the electrons orbit around the nucleus, it is supposed to emit light. But according to Bohr's hypothesis, when the electron is in a stationary state, even if electron revolve around the nucleus, it does not emit light. Then, when does the electron emit light? When electron make a quantum jump. Quantum jump means that when electrons make a transition from one quantum state to another stationary state, this process is called quantum jump. When electrons make a quantum jump, they can emit radiation. Then what's the frequency of the radiation? We are going to use Einstein relation. So delta is the energy difference between these two stationary states. Is equal to nu. So using this equation, we can calculate the frequency emitted from the quantum jump. And finally, how do you obtain stationary state? Now electrons revolve around the nucleus, so we can define angular momentum. Electron is in a circular motion, so electron can have angular momentum. And according to Bohr, angular momentum is not continuous, it is quantized. It is an integer multiple of h bar. So it can take only nh bar. This is the fourth proposition suggested by Bohr. This is the assumption made by Bohr. And Bohr, using this assumption, he derived this Rydberg formula. Okay. Now I'm going to derive this formula.
스테이셔너리 파워의 단어가 무슨
state. Sorry. Okay, let's see. Now, electron have kinetic energy and potential energy. Kinetic energy and potential energy. And electron in a circular motion, so the centrifugal force is exactly balanced by centripetal force. So it must be equal to when electron on a circular motion, the centrifugal force must be centripetal force. So it must be equal, right? So this R can be cancelled. Here R can be cancelled. So MEV square is equal to this one. Here again MEV square. So I'm going to plug in here. So right, when it combine, this is the hydrogen atom energy. When you take this equation, energy depends on R, right? So if you only know the R, you can calculate the energy of hydrogen atom. Now we don't use any quantum mechanical assumption, right? Now to calculate R, we are going to use quantum assumption. Now I'm going to use quantum assumption. What is quantum assumption? Angular momentum is equal to h bar n, right? Do you know h bar is equal to, h bar is defined h over 2 pi. This is the definition of h bar. Okay, and this is equal to anyway, h bar is equal to, and according to classical mechanics, angular momentum L electron revolve around nucleus, then in this case angular momentum is calculated to be here. In your physics textbook, it is calculated to be this one. Anyway, we are going to arrange this one to solve R. Okay. So here R going to here. I'm going to put here. So I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So we must be put into here. Sorry. This is our equation. I'm sorry. When you take this equation, you can arrange this equation to solve R, because this is a constant, right? So you can arrange this equation to solve R. So I don't remember the solution, so I'll take a book. Yeah. So the result is this one. When you solve this equation, R is equal to this one. So here, inside parentheses, is well-known constant. So we are going to define as H0. This is well-known constant. It is called, when you calculate this constant, it is equal to and this one is called O'Reilly. Actually, when you talk about the radius of hydrogen atom, we may say it is the 0.529 angstrom. This is roughly the radius of hydrogen atom radius. Anyway, this is A0. So please note that here n is not real. This integer, this is called quantum number. Please note that this is not integer. This is not real. This is integer. So R only depends on n, quantum number. So R is quantized. I cannot take any arbitrary value. I can take only quantized value. R is discretized. So with this R, we are going to use here. As I said before, energy depends on R, and R is quantized. So energy is also quantized. So I'm going to use this complicated formula to here. Okay, so finally we get energy. When you substitute R to here, energy is equal to, here we have minus sign here. You don't have to memorize this equation. This is the final result. Similar to Rn, the constant inside the parentheses are well-known constant, right? So when you calculate this parentheses, it is equal to 13.6 electron. Do you remember what this value? This is the ionization energy of hydrogen electron. So it is easy to remember. This is the ionization energy of hydrogen electron. This is the radius of hydrogen atom. So anyway, we can calculate the energy of an hydrogen atom. But also energy depends on quantum number n. So energy only depends on. And energy depends on n, and n is quantized. N is not real number, n is integer. So energy is quantized. So this is the result of 4. But remember, our goal is not determine energy of hydrogen atom. What is our goal? What is our ultimate goal? Our goal is to derive this formula, right? So how to derive this formula from energy level? From this. According to Bohr model, this is stationary state. When the light is emitted during quantum jump from initial state to final state. This is the initial state quantum number. This is the final state quantum number. When electron make a quantum jump from initial state to final state, they emit light. So how do you calculate the frequency of wavelengths from this transition? So this one is equal to delta E H nu, right? How do you calculate delta using this formula? Ni minus En epsilon H nu. For Ni here, Ni. And NF for heat. This one equal to H nu, right? But according to wave theory, C equal lambda nu. This is the speed of light. This is wavelength. This is the frequency. Wave should satisfy this relation. So U equal to C, right? So HC is moved to the left. See, this is the equation. Complicated, right? So finally, 1 over lambda. So I'm going to put here this is our final equation. Understand? So when you compare this equation with this equation, you can compare this Rydberg constant with this one, right? But here, this is the derived formula by Moore, but it is composed of well-known constant. So you can calculate this value, right? And with this calculated value, you can compare the experimentally determined value. They exactly match. So Moore successfully predict the re-derive the Rydberg formula. Okay. Now there's a group of spectroscopic scientists argue that there are some mismatch appears here in the this is the formula developed by Bohr. This is the Rydberg constant. In Rydberg constant, here, electron mass appears. This is important. In Rydberg constant, electron mass appears. Okay, please note that. And hydrogen atom energy depends on G square. Okay, please note 2 points. Hydrogen atom energy depends on G square, and in the Rydberg constant, it appears to electron mass. Now, in the second part, they compare the hydrogen energy with helium plus energy. They are both one electron. They have both one electron. The only difference is the nuclear charge. The G equal 1, then G equal 2. Then, when you draw energy level, it looks like this one, right? So, blah 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 blah. That is 13.6 electron volt. What's the energy level of helium plus? We only multiply by 4, right? Why? Helium plus G equal 2. But energy only depends on G square, 4, right? So, when you multiply by 4, this is exactly the helium plus energy level. When n equal 2, when you multiply the value of the n equal to hydrogen level, you obtain the n equal 2 level of H2. You can only multiply 4, then you can obtain the helium plus energy level. Blah 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 blah, right? So this is the energy level of H and H plus. Now compare the frequency of the H and H plus, helium plus. This is the transition from H from n equal to plus n equal 1. Compare with this transition emitted from helium plus n equal to plus n equal 1. What is the frequency ratio between these two lines? When you compare the frequency of H with the frequency of H2 plus, it must be exactly, right? Why? Because the energy level exactly 4 times of this one. So frequency must exactly 1 to 4, right? Similarly, when you compare this line with this line, exactly 1 to 4, right? This is a prediction according to Bohr's theory. But when you spectroscopy measure the spectrum data, the data is not exactly this one. The data is this one. There's a discrepancy in third and fourth discrepancy in decimal place. There's a discrepancy in third and fourth decimal. This is not a small number for spectroscopist. This is a signal. This is not a noise. So, Bohr take a closer look at this value, and Bohr made a correction to his theory and said that this is right, this is wrong, this is right. How? Please remember that in its original theory, in Rydberg constant is mass of electron appears. The important assumption made by Bohr is this: angular momentum is integer multiple of h bar, and according to his original argument is equal to me Vr. So nucleus hit electron here. Angular momentum of atom is angular momentum of electron, and this is me Vr. But when you take a deep thought, actually electron, not only electron moves around, actually nucleus also moves around. Why? There's some kind of centromorph mass exists. Actually, electrons moves center of mass, not nucleus. And nucleus also moves, it is not in a stationary. It moves around center of mass. Both of them moves around center of mass. Then the angular momentum is not me Vr. Actually, it is equal to mu Vr. Is angular momentum. This is wrong. This is right. How do you define? This is a reduced mass. How do you define reduced mass? According to physics textbook, reduced mass is defined as 1 over large m plus 1 over small m. This is the mass of nucleus. This is the mass of electron. Right? So practically, the mass of nucleus is 1,000 times heavier than electron. So in practically, this is actually zero, right? So actually, reduced mass is actually practically equal to approximately electron mass. So this is approximately equal to me. But now the problem is that they argue that the decimal point, the third and fourth decimal point is a problem. So in this case, this one we cannot ignore this one. So we must include this one. So actually, instead of this me, we must use reduced mass to calculate the energy level. So when you use reduced mass instead of electron mass, the energy level slightly modified. So in this case, energy expression, the electron mass is modified by reduced mass. This is the exact energy expression for hydrogen atom. So when you compare the frequency of hydrogen compared to the helium plus, without this term, the frequency ratio only depends on the nuclear charge. Only this term, but now we must consider the reduced mass. So we have additional term. So we have additional term must be considered now. So this one is exactly 4. And this is the experimental value. And when you calculate the ratio between reduced mass, it is equal to so they both accurately predict this value. Okay. Now story does not end here. Another person appears whose name is Urey. Urey receives Nobel Prize using this experimental result. Urey interested in the conducted research about the existence of deuterium. Hydrogen has isotope deuterium. He suspects that hydrogen has isotope which is called deuterium, but he did not have a direct evidence deuterium exists. But he take a close look at this kind of experiment. As we know now, hydrogen and deuterium has single electron. What's the difference between them? The mass of nucleus is different. So Rydberg constant is different. Because hydrogen and deuterium has mass difference, the reduced mass is different. So when you mix together and take a hydrogen spectrum, you have doublet. You obtain slightly split double spectrum is observed. One spectrum corresponds to hydrogen, the other spectrum line corresponds to deuterium. So with this spectrum, Urey provides direct evidence that deuterium exists. So Urey received Nobel Prize for the discovery of deuterium. So this is the hydrogen atom. Now, the important assumption made by Bohr is this one. Bohr argued that if we accept this assumption, you can derive Rydberg formula, but he cannot provide the justification. How can he explain why this assumption comes from? They cannot explain reasonably. Why do we accept this assumption? They cannot provide reasonable explanation. But De Broglie provide reasonable explanation how this assumption come from using matter wave concept. De Broglie are fascinated by relativity theory of Einstein. As you know, Einstein are famous for relativity theory and photoelectric effect. As we know, photoelectric effect argue that E equal h nu, and according to special theory of relativity, E equal to E is Q equal to this comes from special relativity. This equation comes from photoelectric effect. And photon is a very unique particle. Photon is particle, but the mass is zero. So this come cancelled. So when you remove square root, E equal to Pc for photon. So when you combine this two equation, so and we are again use this equation new. So u is cancelled. So finally we obtain this equation has very profound implication. What this equation means, light is wave, so it has wavelength. Light is wave, so it has wavelength. But light sometimes behave like a particle with momentum. Then how do you calculate momentum when light behaves like a particle? You can use this equation. This is the implication of this equation. Then de Broglie make a radical idea. Then what about electron? In this argument, light is a wave. Then light sometimes behave like a particle. Then how about electron? Electron is a particle. So electron is particle, so it has a momentum. Then electron maybe sometimes behave like a wave. If electron sometimes behave like a wave, then what is the wavelength of this wave? The de Broglie's answer is that maybe this is equal to h over p. This is the suggestion made by de Broglie. And using this assumption, they can explain this assumption made by Bohr. Now, nucleus is at the center. Electrons revolve around the nucleus. Now, electrons in a circular motion with a radius r. Now, according to de Broglie's view, electron is not a particle. Electron is a wave with a wavelength. So we can draw waveform. And for the wave to be stable, when the wave make a one turn, its stable must match its initial phase. It exactly matches to avoid destructive interference. So the equation looks like that. The circumference of this radius is equal to 2 pi r must be lambda times n. This is the condition for constructive interference. Here lambda is the wave of these electrons. For the wave to stable, yes, right? When the wave take a one turn, the phase must be returned, right? To avoid destructive interference. So the equation the wave must satisfy is this one. So lambda, according to de Broglie's relation, is h over p. So this is equal to h over p. And p is, according to classical physics, MEV. So MEV move to the left and 2 pi move to the right. Then so we recover both assumptions. So in this way, Bohr can explain both assumptions using this equation. But this is just a conjecture, not a experimental evidence. So we need experimental evidence. Electron actually behaves like a wave with wavelength, this one. So there's a direct experimental evidence that electron just like behaves like a wave with wavelength lambda. first, there's a basic knowledge to review to explain this experiment. There's a regularly spaced grid point. The distance between grid point is d, and wave is scattered off the grid point. The scattering angle is phi. Now I'm going to find a condition for the two waves to make a constructive interference. So for the two waves to make a constructive interference, the path difference must be an integer multiple of this wave, right? The distance between two grid points is d. The scattering angle is phi. Then the path difference is d sine phi. For the constructive interference, this path difference must be integer multiple of lambda. This is the condition. Now, in this equation, if d is predetermined, and p is measured, we can determine lambda. Okay. This is so from this equation we can determine lambda of the wave, incident wave, right? So n is actually integer 1, 2, 3, but according to experimental results, when n equal 1, we obtain highest intensity pattern. So we assume that n equal 1. So when n equal 1, using this equation, we can determine the wavelength of the wave. If d is predetermined, when we measure pi phi, we can determine the wavelength of the incident wave. This is the basic concept, okay? Now, in this figure, this experiment is performed Davidson and Zhao. Davidson and Zhao experiment verify that de Broglie's assumption is right. It's coil. When you hit coil, electron is ejected. To accelerate electron, we install plate to apply voltage. In Davidson-Zhao experiment, we apply 45 volt. So electron is accelerated. And we place regularly spaced nickel atom. This is a regularly spaced grid point. And the distance between nickel atom is predetermined. According to X-ray data, it is equal to 2.15 10 to the minus 10 meter. It is predetermined already by X-ray analysis. And electron is scattered off the nickel. And here electron detector is installed. So this electron detector and determine which angle the electron is scattered. According to experimental result, the theta phi is equal to 50 degree. So to sum up, when you apply 55 voltage, the scattering angle is measured to be 50 degree. This is the experimental result performed by Davidson and Zhao. With this experimental result, they proved that de Broglie's assumption is right. To prove that de Broglie's hypothesis, we calculate lambda two different ways. And I'm going to show that two different independent ways give same result. Okay. In first one, I'm going to calculate lambda based on de Broglie's hypothesis. According to de Broglie hypothesis, this one. So to calculate lambda, we must know the momentum of electron. How do you calculate momentum? Momentum is controlled by this voltage. Why? Electron are accelerated by this voltage. So if you know the voltage, you can determine the momentum. So using this formula, you can determine lambda. And second part, how do you calculate wavelength? Using this formula. Using this formula, you can determine lambda. How? If you measure the scattering angle, and D is predetermined, you can determine lambda. Okay? Okay. First part. So, electron has charge E. The charge E pass through potential difference V. Then how much energy is gained? Charge is E. Potential difference is V. E times V is the energy gained by this electron. This energy is converted to kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is P square. So you can calculate P square equal to, so you put P here. Here V is equal to 54 volt, right? 50 volt. So you can calculate the wavelength, and the result is now second D is predetermined 2.10 to the 10 meter, and scattering angle according to this experimental result, you can see the peak at phi equal 50 degree. And just before n equal 1 is assumed, then using this formula you can determine wavelength. It is equal to 1.6510 to the 10 meter. So two lambda determined by two independent ways give very similar value. So in this way you can prove that the de Broglie's wavelength is right. So in this way they provide a direct evidence that electron generally behaves like a wave. And another experimental evidence was provided that electron generally behaves like a wave. It is on the right side of it. Here, two patterns are displayed. Here, on upper side, is the X-ray diffraction pattern. This is a diffraction pattern by X-ray, and lower part shows diffraction pattern also, but this time electron diffraction. This one obtained by X-ray, lower part obtained by electron. X-ray is wave, but electron is particle. But particle also shows diffraction pattern. It means that electron generally actually behaves like a wave, right? So this experiment also provided direct evidence that electron actually behaves like a wave. This experiment performed by Thomson. Do you remember Thomson? Thomson is famous for the discovery of electron, but he's not the guy who discovered the electron. He is the son of the J.J. Thomson. Okay, now up to this point, we discovered that electron is now wave. As I said in the introduction of quantum mechanics, before quantum mechanics, wave is familiar concept to physicists. Sound is wave, light is wave, and they know how to deal with wave. They describe wave using wave function, such as this function. This is called wave function. How do you obtain wave function? They obtain from wave equation. Wave equation, blah blah blah. Here, from wave equation, you obtain wave function to describe sound wave and light wave. This one developed long before quantum mechanics. Now, electron is wave, right? Actually, this is a material wave. Anyway, this is wave. So, to describe electron material wave, we need wave function to describe electron. So the wave function looks like this. This function describes electron wave function. Then, how do you obtain this function? We need wave function to solve this equation. The wave function, this material wave satisfies called Schrödinger equation. So next time we are going to set up Schrödinger equation, and then we are going to solve Schrödinger equation to obtain wave function. So it's a next time subject. Okay? Do you have question? Then see you next time.